Let's make the best and easiest one-pan breakfast. Start by gathering 3 potatoes. I like mine without the peels in this recipe, but you can leave them on if that's what you'd prefer. Regardless, just make sure your potatoes are washed well before we move on to slicing. To slice your potatoes, we are trying to get them into hash brown size cubes. What I do is slice them into slabs, lay them flat, slice them lengthwise, and then finally chop into small chunks. I always aim for roughly this size, but if yours are larger or smaller, just keep that in mind as you cook. Once all of our potato cubes are prepped, set them aside in a dish while we prep everything else. Next, we want to grab an onion. This recipe is extremely flexible, so whatever size pieces of each of the following veggies will do. I, however, am cutting my onion into fine pieces so I can add it in later in the cooking process, and I can get some in each bite as well. I cut up about 2/3 of a cup of onion and pushed it to the side. Next up, do the same with a bell pepper. Sometimes I use green, sometimes red. It really depends on what I have on hand. Again, I finely chopped up 2/3 of a cup and set that aside. I also love adding mushrooms to this recipe, so I diced up a large cremini mushroom and added that to the pile as well. And lastly, I also had some extra tomatoes waiting to be used up. I like to scoop out the insides so that there isn't too much moisture entering the mix. Once those insides are removed, chop your tomato up finely as well. To start our cooking process, get yourself a large pan on medium heat and melt about 2 to 3 tablespoons of butter in. Once your butter is melted and bubbly, throw your cubed potatoes in. To these, you can add salt, pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, red pepper flakes, paprika, and stir those bad boys up well. Keep stirring for a couple minutes as these cook, then we are going to add some breakfast sausages in. These maple-flavored Johnsonville sausages are my absolute favorite sausages, and the maple flavor is ridiculously good in this breakfast hash. I'm going to use half a pack of these sausages. I add them in whole and start to cook them like this. Keep turning them, and don't forget to keep mixing those potatoes around as well for an even cook on everything. While the sausages start to brown, let's grate some cheese real quick. I grabbed some mozzarella and grated up about 1 cup worth of it. You can grate more or less depending on your preference. Now, once your sausages are nice and browned on the outsides, get whatever tools you'd prefer to use to break them into bite-sized pieces. Usually, metal on metal isn't ideal, but I used a good old knife and fork and remained careful not to scratch up my pan. Break your sausages apart like this, then mix everything up. Now it's time to introduce those chopped veggies to the pan. If you cut them bigger than I did, you'll want to have added them in a little bit earlier. Dump them all in and feel free to add in some more salt and pepper or any other seasonings for extra flavor. Stir occasionally, and while our veggies cook with everything else, we can get our eggs ready. Collect up 5 eggs, crack them into a small dish, and then beat them with a fork like so. When your veggies are cooked to your liking in the pan, pour your beaten eggs over everything and let it all cook. Stir here and there, making sure not to leave uncooked egg between the pieces. Now we are just about done. Turn off your heat, sprinkle in all of your grated cheese, and mix that throughout your hash until it becomes gooey and stringy. My absolute favorite thing about this recipe is that you can eat it in so many different ways. When I'm feeling lazy, like today, I just load it onto a plate and eat as is. Another option that I recommend is loading your hash into burritos. I also love piling it on a piece of toast and eating it with my hands, but that can get very messy. The final thing I do before digging in is adding a drizzle of hot sauce on top for some extra flavor and a bit of a kick. Sriracha is usually my go-to, but have some fun with it if you have any other kinds of sauce you'd like to try. Enjoy!